Yeah, I don't think they're getting, everybody says the Cardinals need an ace. Well, yeah, they do. But I don't think they're getting an ace at this trade deadline.
No,
I don't think that's the type of move that you're necessarily looking at, whether it's trading a Montgomery, Flaherty, Hicks, some combination of those guys to a contender. Well, if that team has an ace, they're keeping him for the playoff run to put along with the Flaherty, Montgomery, Hicks that they would inevitably acquire. So that's not a way to get an ace. Another way to potentially get an ace would be to trade the types of position players that the Cardinals have basically said we really don't want to trade. At that point, you're talking about the Lars Nootbaars of the world, and we just don't think the Cardinals are inclined to make that kind of move, and those types of aces just may not be available at a trade deadline when everybody in baseball, for the most part, that has an ace is kind of in the mix on at least thinking maybe they could still make a run at a wild card or something like that. But what the Cardinals can do is add exactly what you said, depth not only in the rotation for 2023 and 2024, but I think just pitching in general, right? Relief pitching is going to be a factor as well. Guys that can give them innings, whether you classify them as a starter or reliever, if they're controllable and they don't cost that much in terms of salary, I think the Cardinals are going to be interested in that because, like you said, they're going to have to use some of that salary muscle, that payroll flexibility, probably to try and sign an ace or at least a really good starter that's going to cost you money in the offseason.
875 KTGR. So who would that other team be that the Cardinals could make that good deal with? Let us know who you think. 875-5847. Who could it be, Brenden? What do you think? Well,
I've got two teams. I've got two.
Two teams. Okay, hit them.
Do you have any, or do you want me to fire off?
I have a few flimsy options, I think, at best, but fire off what you think. I was kind of digging around seeing what could be the possibilities here, but go ahead.
I think number one is New York Yankees.
Probably.
I think that's
I believe the Athletic had a piece about that too today, yeah.
Yeah, and Katie Wu with one of their, I guess the writers on the Yankees side, went back and forth with kind of talking about what some certain things could look like. And there were some uncomfortable names brought up in that article, like a Brendan Donovan. But I think that's, if you're from the Yankees side, you're thinking, hey, Brendan Donovan would be a great player to add to our mix. But I think any team would have Brendan Donovan labeled as a great player to add to their mix. That's why the Cardinals are probably keeping him. We have talked a lot about the fact that we think the Cardinals should keep him. I tend to believe that they ultimately will. But other names like, Dylan Carlson is a guy the Cardinals aren't exactly using on a daily basis right now. And if the Yankees decide that they're interested in him, maybe that's a fit. I don't know. There's a number of position players that I think could be interesting. But also, if you're the Yankees, you could use starting pitching as well. They've gone through some pitching injuries this season. And they have Carlos Rodon come back, and he's not looking so great right now. Not that they're going to can him from the rotation right away, but you look up and down their rotation, a guy like Jordan Montgomery, who they just sent to St. Louis last summer, would upgrade the Yankees' rotation right now. Even Jack Flaherty, I think, would be an upgrade to their rotation. So I could see a world where the Cardinals could package a position player and maybe one of those short-term pitchers and have the Yankees find both of those guys attractive and allow for the Cardinals to maybe get that future pitcher that's got more team control associated. Like a name that's being talked about is Clark Schmidt. He has pitched for the Yankees this season. He's got a 4.31 ERA in 19 starts and 94 innings. He's a guy with a solid K rate, walks maybe more guys than you wish, but has been pretty solid by and large this season. But he's got a lot of control attached. So you might say, well, why would the Yankees trade him if he's in their rotation? Well, I would say that Jordan Montgomery would be an upgrade to that player in the interim, right? We're talking about the next 2 months that the Yankees still, their record's not that great. They're 50-47, but the Yankees are the Yankees, and so I don't think it's acceptable to that fan base to say, we're only 3 games above 500. We're gonna mail it in here. No, I think they could be buyers at the deadline, certainly. But if they get a guy that's a position player the Cardinals have who's under team control, that's not just a strict buy move. They would be adding a long-term asset as well, and then in the short term, they could at least say, well, fans, we don't have Schmidt for a long time now because we traded him to the Cardinals, but we replaced him with a better pitcher that can help us in 2023. Some kind of deal like that, I could see being attractive. Then it's just down to, what else do the Cardinals want, and is it something that they can stomach trading away one of those talented position players?
Yeah, that's what you have to wrestle with, is that depending on which position player the Yankees would ask for in return, then you're evaluating that deal back and forth. So 875 KTGR, do you like that deal? Do you like maybe the Yankees as a good trade partner for the Cardinals here?
And the one little rub to that would be, if we're talking Dylan Carlson, the problem with the Yankees is they just can't hit. If you look up and down their lineup from yesterday's game at the OPSs in that lineup, the highest OPS in their starting lineup yesterday was 759, and they go 658, 652, 687, 698. They've got 7 guys with an OPS in the 600s. and 2 guys in the 700s, including Giancarlo Stanton, who's hitting for a 198 average. Their offense without Aaron Judge is absolutely putrid, and it's why they're kind of in the position that they're in right now, sinking down in the standings. So I don't know if Dylan Carlson, they probably like the outfield defense boost, can put him alongside Harrison Bader and have, basically 2/3 of the Cardinals outfield coming into the season last year. But offensively, I don't know if Carlson would exactly be what they're looking for in terms of that upgrade. The Yankees might hold out and say, we need one of those other guys that has a little bit more upside against right-handed pitching. And that's where Tyler O'Neill, if he has a good week or so, he's just activated today, maybe he etches his name into consideration. I just don't know for sure what the Yankees would think of a Tyler O'Neill. Do you think maybe that would be something? Because he's got upside, but his LPS is also in the 600s. He would have to show and demonstrate he's over the back issue and can perform like he did in 2021 for the Yankees, I think, to even give it a sniff.
I think both guys you're talking about, maybe not providing the extra push towards the playoffs that you're hoping for, but maybe you're just looking for control by outfielders. Because O'Neill's somewhat controllable. He's through next year, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's still kind of a rental, but you still get a little bit more time to figure out what he could be. Carlson, I think, is a little bit more attractive in that sense. I like his defense a little bit better, and you have more years to figure out what he can be. The outfield for the Yankees, though, I don't know how many movable pieces there are. I mean, Judge is there. Stanton, I guess, is there every once in a while, but he's mainly the DH. Harrison Bader is there. I mean, it's not like you need another center fielder. You've got Harrison Bader. So it's...
Well, Harrison Bader, I believe, is expiring as well at the end of the season, if I'm not mistaken. That's why the Cardinals traded him. So maybe hey, Tyler O'Neill can be their center fielder. There you go.
Exactly.
Even though...
And I know they haven't really been all that. You haven't felt all that great about Aaron Hicks either. So I mean,
I don't think Aaron Hicks is on that team, is he?
Yeah, I guess not anymore. But
that's what I'm saying. I think he's long gone.
I was looking at Baseball Reference, and no, he's gone. But
that's a whoopsie.
But here's the thing: you have some spots there that I think are workable, and so I would maybe lean Carlson if the Yankees, because that's the trade-off. You're giving up a little bit of your future in the rotation with Clark Schmidt. You maybe need to supplement that by some security in the future in the outfield.
Yeah, but I don't know that Carlson fixes, defensively, he'd be nice. I think they had Isaiah Kiner-Falefa in center field at times this season.
They did.
That's not great. But Carlson's not an upside against, he doesn't fix it offensively, whereas they're called the Bronx Bombers, not the Bronx play good outfield defense. Tyler O'Neill can hit some bombs, and so if you really wanted to take your shot on that...
Well, I will say this, short porch and right, though, I mean, there's a little bit more opportunity for a guy like Dylan Carlson.
Yeah, but Dylan Carlson hasn't really hit the right-handed pitching. I see what you're saying, though. Some of those fly balls that might get caught at the warning track in right field in Busch Stadium, maybe they leave the yard at Yankee Stadium. Listen, I'm not trying to downplay Dylan Carlson. I like Dylan Carlson for the Cardinals. For the Yankees, I wonder if because their issue is offense, if they would prioritize high upside offense more than they would the steadiness and team control of what Dylan Carlson would bring to the table. But here's another name I would throw at you.
Okay.
Doesn't it just feel like the baseball universe deserves Juan Yepez slugging for the New York Yankees? Doesn't it just feel like we all deserve that? Juan Yepez deserves it. Juan Yepez's dad on Twitter deserves it. Everybody deserves this happening because he doesn't have a role with the Cardinals. Maybe the Stanton thing is the problem because Stanton can't play defense and neither can Yepez really. But I don't know. I just don't even care what the deal is. I wanted to see Juan Yepez go and be an everyday player for the Yankees if a deal happens between the Cardinals and Yankees.
That's honestly, I would prefer that over dealing Dylan Carlson or Tyler O'Neill for that matter.
But Yepez has lesser value. He's kind of like a throw-in that ends up, being AL hitter of the month or whatever for August, and then Cardinals fans go,
the centerpiece of the deal would be Jordan Montgomery still. You deal him to the Yankees so that they have some more experience for the playoffs if they get there.
I think you trade Montgomery, or if they want Flaherty, because I don't know, it might be awkward to be traded back to a place that just traded you a year ago. I don't know if that plays into it, but I think there's a compelling argument the Cardinals and John Mozeliak could make to the Yankees and say, hey, listen, we want this controllable pitcher that you have. I know he's got some upside, but this guy we can give you for the next 2 months is better. It'll probably help you win more games right now. And we're also going to give you, this position player or these 2 position players, and those guys are controllable. Maybe that is enough to kind of assuage whatever fears the Yankees would have about letting go of a young pitcher. I think that would be attractive. And one other name to bring up from the Yankees side of it before I do want to give you my second team that I think could be a fit for the Cardinals as a trade partner. And let us know yours at 875-KTGR. But the guy's name is Clayton Beeter. He is a pitching prospect who has a 4.11 ERA this year in AAA. Just kind of came up to there from AA and had really good numbers there with a high strikeout rate. He's a prospect, but 31 walks in 60 innings in AA and 8 walks in 15 innings in AAA. So he's walking basically 4 or 5 guys per 9, which is a little bit high. And I wonder if as a result of that, the Yankees might be willing to include him in a deal, either with Clark Schmidt or instead of him. That's another name that I feel like could very well end up a St. Louis Cardinal at the end of this all. And so I just wanted to bring his name up. Clayton Beeter, not a big league guy, but he fits the description of, hey, he could be in a big league rotation by 2024.
He's competing for a spot next year.
Competing for a spot going into spring training. And honestly, if they traded him, if the Yankees traded him and the Cardinals traded away one of their starters to get him, he probably goes right into the rotation.
Yeah.
Even with the walk issues and stuff at AAA, you just kind of see what you have if you're the Cardinals at that point.
875-KTGR, who would be the best trade partner for the St. Louis Cardinals? It seems that the Yankees make the most sense, but who's the other team that you're looking at, Brenden?
I still think the Seattle Mariners could be real interesting.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of young pitching. This move would probably be more along the lines of you're trading a good position player to do it, because they're like right at 500 and maybe don't have the same level of desire to have to be a buyer no matter what at the deadline. The Yankees, I think, are going to be buyers. Like they can't do anything else. They've got plenty of money. They need to kind of show that fan base like we're still going to make a run at this thing. I'd be surprised if they don't. The Mariners could go any certain direction, but for them, with all the extra pitching that they have, and now losing Jared Kelenic to hitting his foot on a cooler, like kicked a cooler, broke his foot.
Yeah,
that's an outfielder there. So like maybe even more so than before, if those guys hovering right around 500 decide we need to add offense and we've got enough pitching to be able to afford to do it. I'm not saying they're getting Logan Gilbert, and we know that George Kirby is not even available, according to John Morosi, who reported that a couple of weeks ago. But they have other guys as well, and I just would have a concern of if the Cardinals go below Logan Gilbert in the pecking order. They've got a guy named Brian Wu who's got so-so numbers in the big leagues this year, but lots of control. A couple of other guys that
Bryce
that
Miller
potentially
is another guy.
Bryce Miller is another one was a good prospect and is doing a nice job. I happen to like Matt Brash, who's a relief pitcher for them.
He's good.
I think start of last year they tried to make him a starting rotation guy. Didn't work out. He went back to the minors and returned as a pretty solid reliever. And he's controllable too. Whether he's a starter ever again doesn't really matter. Cardinals could use him in their bullpen. I just wonder if the Cardinals would make a deal where they get like a Brash and a Wu, but they give up the wrong position player like a Nootbaar or a Donovan. They say they're not trading Nootbaar, so that leaves me going, oh no, what if they do that kind of deal? They trade a Brenden Donovan, which you should never do, of course, and then the pitchers they get back, it's like, you shopped on a lower shelf than they had to shop in terms of, they had lots of good pitchers and you got the 4th or 5th best one instead of saying, give us Logan Gilbert if we're trading a Brenden Donovan or a Nootbaar. That's my concern of a potential match with the Mariners, but I think there's a lot of workability there, especially when you consider Jerry DiPoto, their president of baseball ops, is a madman. He wants to make moves. He trades like it's MLB The Show. And so there's a willingness on his end.
Here's the thing. You're afraid of Brenden Donovan being traded there, but here's who I would dangle if I were the Cardinals over to the Mariners to get one of those pitchers, maybe Matt Brash. I would dangle Nolan Gorman. That's who I would dangle.
Tricky. It's so tricky.
So spicy.
He's coming around.
He's coming around.
Offensively. Does that scare you?
The Mariners, a little bit. The Mariners right now have Colton Wong, who is on the last year of his deal.
Oh, no.
At second base.
They have to send him back. They have to send him back then.
Send him back?
That's only fair.
I think they'd be willing.
All right. That's fine. I'm sure the Cardinals would be just fine with that.
No, I think the Mariners would be, and the Cardinals are like, we have 10 second basemen. No,
that's exactly it. But, Jose Caballero has been playing most of the second base, but he hasn't been all that great either. And so I think Nolan Gorman
would be a huge fit.
I think that would fit what they're trying to do. So if I really want to make that deal, that's who I would probably want the Mariners to take more than Brenden Donovan.
But which pitcher are you satisfied with getting back in order to say, I'm trading a guy who probably will hit 35 home runs this year? 30 to 35. He's up to like 19 now. It was easy to say trade Gorman when he was stinking up the joint, but now that he's kind of slugging again, what's the name that you go, it's got to be at least this guy. I won't take anybody lesser than that.
I'd go Bryce Miller.
I would need Logan Gilbert to trade Gorman, I think.
Maybe. Okay.
And that might mean it's not happening.
Or Miller and Matt Brash, like a package those two.
I would be very intrigued by. If you're getting Brash as well, I think it's a quality thing. Cardinals need quality, but they also need quantity of quality. And so you're getting Matt Brash and another young guy. That would be very compelling to me, and it would make sense. And also, there's a world in which, as long as Tommy Edman gets healthy and Donovan's throwing arm gets healthy, there's a world in which that helps the 2023 Cardinals win more baseball games. Because suddenly their pitching is actually better. Now, mind you, they're probably moving Montgomery, Flaherty, and Hicks in other deals. I still recognize that, barring the sweep at Wrigley, which still may not change their minds. But I think that's really interesting because you'd be adding Bryce Miller or whatever it is and Brash to this Cardinals team. They get to pitch for you right now, and you're losing a Nolan Gorman who you replaced with Brendan Donovan playing second base every day, and maybe that's just the way it works out, and you don't actually lose a lot from your everyday lineup. I do think getting Edman back helps solidify that a little more with what your day-to-day lineup flexibility would be. But there's a world that's a true statement. I just don't know. Again, it's the tiers of it for me. We've got tiers of Cardinals position players that we all kind of think, here's how I rank the tiers. Those teams have tiers of their own pitching that if the Cardinals can shop on an even shelf and say, hey, I'm giving you a top shelf guy, you got to give one back, then I think these two teams, Yankees and Mariners, are excellent fits.
Yeah.
But that's where the negotiating comes in. Like you got to figure out, John Mozeliak, what you're willing to do, and if you're willing to walk away from a deal that is so close, but they're asking for a little more than you want to give, that's where the rubber's going to meet the road on this whole thing.
875 KTGR, who's the best trade partner for the Cardinals? So, Brenden, you threw out the Yankees and the Mariners, and I would like either of those teams. I actually kind of like those options a little bit more than the teams that I kind of came up with, but I think it's still kind of interesting, and I think the Cardinals should at least try and make the call here on this. I'm interested in what the Diamondbacks got. So here's the situation with the Diamondbacks rotation. Obviously Zach Gallen, he's their ace, and probably expecting, or at least are going to make that push to be a playoff team, so they want to make sure the rotation is as short up as possible. They've got Zach Gallen, but other than that, they've been kind of hit with some injuries. Zach Davies has both been bad, and he's on the 15-day IL right now. Merrill Kelly is also hurt at the moment, so they don't have a whole lot of depth there. They have a couple of rookies, though, in Ryan Nelson and Tommy Henry, that have had to pick up some of that slack. If you sell to the Diamondbacks, look, you'll probably get Merrill Kelly back. If you give us one of those two rookies, we'll give you like a Jordan Montgomery and maybe a Jordan Hicks to pair into your bullpen, which has been great this year. The Diamondbacks bullpen has been nails. You want to solidify it even more, you give them Hicks too, with either a Flaherty or Montgomery. Those are two guys that have the experience that you can rely upon to call on in a playoff series, and then give us one of those rookies.
Who are these rookie pitchers? I'm interested
Ryan
in
Nelson
this,
and Tommy Henry. Nelson this year, 6-5. ERA is at 4.82. Not great, but he's pitched a whole lot of innings. He's leading. He's like 106 now, which is second on the team. Not a whole lot of strikeouts. Maybe you hope for somebody who gives you a little bit more of the swing and miss.
That's the rub on this whole thing, Andy, because those two guys both are not huge K guys, which kind of feels like exactly what Monday John Mozeliak said we need to not get away from. But he talked about changing their model and the way they approach pitching. I think you do have to go with some, like they've been all about historically, get guys who can throw strikes, and we will let our defense make sure that it does the rest. And if you don't strike out a bunch of guys, that's okay. Just don't walk them. Just don't put them on base. That's kind of been the way they've tried to develop. They might just need to reverse course and go, does this guy have wipeout stuff and he can't throw a strike to save his life? Let's teach him. Let's hope he can teach him, because it's a hard thing. You can't teach strike throwing. That's kind of the old adage. But I think the Cardinals, with those two guys specifically, you might look at that and go, that's Dakota Hudson. They're adding more Dakota Hudsons, and they've already got guys like that.
Yeah. That's true. It's projects,
The other guy that they have, though, was, I don't know if he's a top prospect, but somewhat regarded. And I think his numbers this year are bad because, like I said, I'm looking at guys who, solid minors numbers, maybe a pedigree as a prospect, but bad cup of coffee. Their cup of coffee was stale and it didn't taste good.
Yeah.
And so that's a problem with that guy. Brandon Pfaadt is his name. I think I'm saying it right.
I think you are,
He's got a 9.82 ERA. so far this year with Arizona, but I think he's in Reno now.
9 home runs he's given up in
up a ton of bombs.
Like 6 games.
But if you look at his minor league numbers last year in Double-A, 144 Ks in 105 innings. In Triple-A, 74 Ks in 61 innings. And this year, he's got 69 Ks to 60 Triple-A innings. So, guy who can maybe have something to be said about a strikeout rate despite everything else being a little bit wonky. I'm not giving up a ton for him, but that kind of feels like the type of guy where you'd give up like a Jack Flaherty, give up a rental pitcher, or even like a Jordan Hicks, and something along those lines. He might be more interesting to me. It's risky. Again, you're not getting your ace at this trade deadline by trading rentals, but what you can potentially do is take a shot on a guy that has those qualities that you look for to potentially rise above his station when he strikes out a bunch of guys and figures out the rest of it. That's kind of the area that I think I'd be looking.
Yeah, that's probably where you're most likely going to get a little bit more success. So we'll see. 875-KTGR if you want to call or text us here. There's one other team. It's less likely. And it's almost kind of a pipe dream, and it might even be a little bit risky on the Cardinals' end too. But if you call Tampa and you say look, you lost some of your starters, and if you want a guy that's a little bit more consistent, like a Jordan Montgomery, and you want to maybe give us, Jeffrey Springs, who just had Tommy John surgery. Or
the Cardinals go for a guy that just had TJ. That's interesting.
He might not be ready for spring training next year, but could you he's got a lot of he's getting paid $5 million.
Is interesting.
$5 million next year. They just avoided arbitration with him by signing him to a deal that's got him there through 2027 or something like that.
So I don't think you can trade a guy on the 60-day IL. I might be making that up, but I don't know if you can.
Probably,
but otherwise that would be kind of compelling.
That's what I would be compelled by too. The other one would be Drew Rasmussen, but I don't think the Rays would part with him, even though he also just had Tommy John surgery. I
think it's really easy, and I'm not suggesting this will happen, but I think it's really simple. You bring Pete Fairbanks home.
That's right,
and it's done. Right,
done.
It's just done. I would trade Jack Flaherty for Pete Fairbanks. I understand that you don't have a starting pitcher in Pete Fairbanks, but now he's one of their best relievers, and so that's maybe something that just doesn't get done. But you know what? St. Louis guy went to Mizzou. Just make it happen. I don't know. That's what I want.
Why not?
It's all about what we want on the radio, right? It's not about what these teams want. But anyway,
Definitely
I like the Rays too. I could see Jordan Montgomery absolutely as a Tampa Bay Ray.
875-KTGR. Give us your thoughts. Who would you want to see the Cardinals trade with? Shane texted in. How about trading with the Royals and trying to get some of their young talented pitchers? I hope that's a joke, Shane.
Some of their what?
I hope that's a joke.
I'm going to assume that's
yes,
really
I want the youthful pitcher of Zach Greinke on the St. Louis Cardinals for the next couple.
That is such a funny. That's text of the day if I've ever heard it right there. That is good stuff,
man. Yeah. Jordan Lyles right now is the pitcher with the most innings. I guess he's tied with Brady Singer. They're both at 102 2/3 for the season.
I'm sure there's a young pitcher for the Royals. His age is not that large of a number, but his ERA is probably a pretty large number. And so you're not really worried about it. Either that or he's injured.
You say don't trade position players, but the Cardinals have too many position players right now. And so, you might like some of them, but you're not getting everything that you can from them because not all of them can play every day, Brenden. You just don't get the same out of them when you have a logjam of spots and you can't put them out there every single day.
That's part of it, and the desire to ride this out is one that the Cardinals don't have. They are going to be selling those short-term pitching assets because of the idea that they want to improve for 2024. And as much as it would be nice to think that they could offer a contract to Montgomery or Flaherty in the offseason, I don't think there's any guarantee of those players signing those contract offers. There's going to be 29 other teams that will be able to do the same. And so the idea would be if you're not in it at this point for 2023 because of the rough job that Mo did, as James mentioned, then I think you'd want to get what you can for those players. And it's true that these guys are maybes. You can go down the list of everybody that we named as far as pitchers that will be coming back to the Cardinals.
Yeah.
They are ifs and maybes all the way through, other than a Logan Gilbert or maybe a couple of the guys from the Mariners. But that's kind of what you're going to end up getting, especially if you're trading just rental pitchers to those teams. The reason that they're willing to trade them for the guys on your team that are doing better right now is because they're prioritizing winning this season, and they'll sacrifice a little bit of hope for the future on a maybe, whereas the Cardinals aren't prioritizing that, and they could say, we'll take a maybe. A maybe's better than a nothing.
Right. You just need the depth at the moment. We recognized what the Cardinals situation is with the rotation. It just needs an overhaul. So you have to get some bodies in the room that have a little bit of that experience and maybe some potential. They haven't shown it completely at this level, and if they had, then those teams, you're right, they're not going to want to part ways with them. They want to see them through themselves. You're trying to get as many flyers as possible from some of these guys to build out some depth that you can then work with next year. And no, you're not getting a bona fide ace over the next couple of weeks. Nobody's going to want to trade you that unless you give up a big package of players that would be an overpay at this point. So it's just, you have to make sure that you get as many assets as you can, get some bodies in the room that can compete for the rotation spots next year. And in the offseason, like your job's not done after this. Like, this is a process that's going to have to take all the way up until spring training starts next year for the Cardinals to overhaul this rotation. But it does have to start now with as many little moves as they can make here and there to get things rolling.